Good afternoon and welcome to the monthly webinar of IHE-Europe. Before we start, and while waiting for some other people to join us, we would like to go over some practical things. Please keep your microphone muted during this session. If you have questions during the session, you can put it in the chat box. We will address them at the end of the webinar. At that time, you will be able to unmute yourself. Please also know that all our monthly webinars are being recorded and they are available on our IHE-Europe YouTube channel. The slides will be made available on the website of IHE-Europe, the same page that announces future webinars. Our next monthly webinar in December will be on Friday, 13th of December, again at 1 p.m. And it will be on the National Infrastructure for Imaging in Finland. So you can register for this webinar on the IHE-Europe webinar web page. Also, we encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn as we do post plenty of valuable information there. So today, the monthly webinar is on how European projects work together towards the European health data space. We are here today with the IHE-Europe European Affairs team, the chair Pieter de Volder and Sofia Franconi. They will both present you the European projects and the links and the interests to you. I will give the floor to Pieter now.
Good afternoon, everybody. As said, my name is Pieter de Volder. I currently hold the position as the European Affairs Chair for IHE-Europe. I hope everybody who's in the call knows what IHE stands for, but maybe you're not that familiar with what the European Affairs Committee does. But actually, that team, which is now a team of at least 3 people, but that gets augmented with a lot of volunteers. We are a team that try to get as much of IHE's ideas and principles across through European projects. And what we're trying to do this afternoon is to try to give you an idea of what the history of European projects in the realm of healthcare interoperability, what they were like, what they historically did, and how they all fit together and move towards the next steps. So yeah, we try to make it as a little bit. Maybe it's not funny, but it's specifically this is what we feel the whole space of interoperability in Europe is going towards. It all started really small in the 2000s with projects like you can see that once you zoom in, once you get to the PowerPoint, but projects like EPSOS. And they moved through projects like just seen Cross eHealth, Expand EH, and now they're actually rather culminating to projects like XShare and XT-EHR. All those projects are collaborations between a lot of organizations, a lot of European organizations, lots of volunteers, lots of standardization bodies. And what IHE also has always tried to do, also people from the interoperability sphere that is IHE. We can give an overview of those different acronyms. It might be a bit of an acronym day today. It's a bit of a historical thing that everything gets an abbreviation. I won't explain them here all. I think most of you already know a lot of them. EHDS is the word of the day. Yet there are another one and a couple of ones that are less known. They all fit together though in a way that actually tries to culminate towards what the European Commission is trying to do with the electronic health data spaces. As a just a very small introduction. Again, people will probably know this, but EHDS has mostly 3 parts, with a lot of emphasis on the first and the third part. Primary use, it is becoming a right for patients to access their healthcare data. The operationalization, that's it, of this thing is actually what IHE is in this world for, and what we're trying to do together with other healthcare standardization bodies like HL7, like SLOMED, and everything is trying to work towards the same goal, and that is the primary use of healthcare data for patients. However, EHDS is going a bit further than that, and it's also trying to at least put some legislation around the EHRs of the future. And the projects that we are or have been involved in and still are involved in right now are actually building the requirements and the framework of how at least the legislative stuff that comes down from the European Commission towards both member states and even further if they get where they want. How that gets done is what we're trying to give you an insight in today. Secondary use is the next layer or the next frontier that EHDS is trying to breach, but I don't think we're going to talk about that today this much. That is still very much under development. I think we have a lot on our plate with handling primary use today. So now we're going to go into a rather dense slide, I think, and the dense slide is giving you an overview also historically on what that does. On the top, you see the different projects with their names. Please look them up. Please look up deliverables and stuff. But I think Sophia is going to give you some insights in each one of those, and potentially giving an insight on what the deliverables are and what the general overarching idea of those projects is. I'll give the floor to Sophia right now.
Thank you, Peter. So I won't get into too much detail for all the projects, but I will try to explain the whole timeline of those projects and a bit what each of them is doing and how they are interacting with each other. So it all started with EPSOS in 2008. That was for the development of the MySATU infrastructure, and more specifically for the patient summary, e-prescription, and e-dispensation. So the legacy of those projects are currently still in use. So we have more than 14 countries that are live. So we can see here with a slide from MySATU, which is the infrastructure. We see that as from 2023, there were 14 countries live, and in 2024, there are 7 more that are joining, and the same schedule for 2025. So after EPSOS, we had a group of different projects from 2014 to 2022 that worked on different use cases, and more specifically with the establishment of implementation guide and CDS specification for laboratory results, hospital discharge reports, and medical imaging. So on top of the prescription, e-dispensation, and patient summary that were already put in place with EPSOS. And then, so these were past projects, and then we are moving on to the projects that are currently happening with, for example, ExpandDH. The goal of this project that is finishing in December was really to build community around the format, to build an ecosystem, and to further elaborate the specification, especially on FHIR. So here are the result of the project as we have them now that the project is ending. So most of the work was on really creating a community. So we built 10 XNets that are a group of people appartening from same group of stakeholders that engaged in the project result, but also everything that was happening in the project and with the format. We also built some community of doers with specific use cases, so that keep a use case and then build some recommendation. We also had a lot of collaboration with other projects, for example, with EHDS on the yellow button that I will explain a bit later. We did also some experimentation with 11 bubbles that exchanged some laboratory reports. We also continued the building of the specification with IHE and with the X-Bundle repository, and 2 readiness models that you can find already in the project results. And we built some recommendation also for other projects like the joint action XTHR that I will explain a bit later also. So we spoke about XR, and now I can explain to you a bit more in detail what it is. So the goal of this project is to build a yellow button. It's a bit like you saw in the US with the blue button, but this time in Europe. So the goal is to have your data as a patient that can be shared with a button from your health app in your country. So here is the timeline of the project. So the project was launched in December last year. During this year, in May, we had the first industry and regulators forum creation, and we launched the button and the first button campaign. So to explain what it is and how it can be used. In November, we had the adoption site starting the deployment of the XR toolbox. In May next year, we will have the second button campaign. We will have then the implementation of the open call for the implementation of the XR button. We'll have then the implementation with the adoption sites that are directly already in the project. And then towards the end of the project, we will have the harmonized datasets available for public use, and the project is set to end of 2026. So we saw the ExpandDH project, we saw the XR project, but they are interacting with one project that maybe you also know, which is the joint action, or XTHR. So this project has the aim of establishing guidelines for the development of EHR systems to promote smooth connection among healthcare providers within member states. So it's really focused on the member states in Europe. So we see that the 2 projects, ExpandDH and XR, give information and feedback to the joint action, and the joint action then feed information from the member states to the XR project. So the joint action has a specific timeline to deliver the documents to the European Commission. So we see that for the documents that are more mature and that are there from the beginning, from, for example, the prescription, e-dispensation, and patient summary, the delivery for the Commission is planned for the start of 2026, so in more or less 1 year. And for laboratory reports, hospital discharge, and imaging study, that would be more or less 6 months after. So for you to understand a bit how XTHR is in the European landscape, I have this slide that maybe it's not the, the most beautiful one, but I think it explains the interaction between the different projects. So we did a project like ExtendDH, XR, and other one that feed information to XTHR that did feedback, and then XTHR is really interacting with the national deployment and with MyHealth.eu. So I will deep dive maybe into MyHealth.eu. I guess that all of you more or less know already what it is, but it's the secure digital infrastructure that enables cross-border exchange across Europe. So now the focus of MyHealth.eu in these days is really to implement the lab results, hospital discharge reports, and medical imaging. So the documents that are already supported are the ones that we saw previously, so patient summary, e-prescription, e-dispensation, and now we are focusing on the next use cases. So here is a bit of a graphic how it interacts. So we have the EHDS network guidelines for hospital discharge report, laboratory report, and imaging study and reports. that were co-created in Europe. They were reviewed also by the different projects, so as EHDS, and then they will be implemented by EHR. So we see that most of the implementation will happen in wave 9, which is in 2005, 2006, and it will continue until 2028. And of course, those projects are not the only one that works toward this goal. We have new projects that will happen, that will start in January. So the first one would be I2X for the demonstration with the industry. And myHealth at my end will take the information from myHealth at EU and continue the work with new services. Maybe I will pass the floor back to Peter. I would explain a bit the later steps.
Yeah. There is a question in the group. The question is, what is the role of IHE-Europe in both of those projects, which is, of course, a very good question. Both in Expand and EHDS, what IHE's role is to either, well, we have two main tasks that we're trying to achieve. One is to have or to influence the specification setting so that they align as much as possible with international profiles that IHE already has available. We aim to get as much alignment as possible. Of course, for the European setting, there is a bidirectional communication that needs to be done, and we try to be in work packages where we can have influence on that. Also another role that we always try to play is to make sure that the IHE methodology as we or as IHE in general generally works, in which that is defining the use cases from the definition of the use cases, taking the best practices of the current standards at that time. Once they are internationally profiled, try to get them into products of the different vendors, and then a very specific and necessary part is to actually involve the whole testing methodology and to have a testing framework available. Both for the products in which the things that are implemented, but also for the projects that are actually using the specifications that are being built, so that they are conformance testable. Those two ideas are the main focus of what IHE European Affairs tries to infuse in all those different projects, all the while trying to coordinate and make sure that we are as much in line as possible with what is generally already available. What you probably saw, in a very, we're trying to make it not that dense. It's a lot of information, giving you a whole overview of what specifically was done in individual projects. I don't think everybody needs this at this time, but what you can see is that the Commission definitely has tried with their projects to create a sort of stepping stone idea on interoperability. First, with EPSOS, they created some basic infrastructure. With Expand and Justine and the first across eHealth sections, they tried to ramp up the whole idea of building specifications that could be testable, that could be distributed among the member states, distributed among the vendors that actually engage with those member states. And then from the projects of Expand EH, we also try they try to create a community around the whole idea of having conformance testable specifications for Europe. In EHDS, where we see the first operationalization, I keep having trouble with that word, operationalizations of that idea, and having actual first demos of the first drafts of the specifications of the format that we've seen. And so what I2X, My Health at My Hands, is then trying to do is now trying to take what is being defined in EHR together with collaborations with Expand EH and EHDS to have a growing group of specifications or an assembly of specifications so that they can actually operationalize this. I got it that time. What they then try to underpin this with, or overarch, depending on how you see it, is then to move all this into a legislative framework. And that is where EHDS is now has come in. The legislation has passed, I think the end of last year, if I'm not mistaken. And so by making EHDS a legal framework, they actually give this a little bit more clout, and will have the possibility to actually try to engage other member states to take up these specifications that are being created, and through the use of open NCP and the national contact points, actually influence the way the individual member states communicate with each other, and if possible, also push down through the recommendations for the EHR systems, push down all those requirements down to regional healthcare systems and even individual EHRs within hospitals and other care provider settings. So that is where the whole framework fits in. And as you can see, historically, this has been growing, and the European Commission has funded all these things since the 2000s. It's a collaboration between a lot of standardization organizations. Maybe some of you have seen the press release of last week. HL7 and IHE-Europe, the both European parties have joined hands and will try to jointly add value to the EHDS project in general, and to the operationalization of the format, of which there comes a slide afterwards, I think. So one of the main questions that we see remaining is it's probably the most difficult acronym of the day. You've got the acronym EHRXF. I'm very proud that I can pronounce that one. It's actually and the common name in all those projects, because it's too difficult to pronounce, is actually the format. Now, what we get a lot of questions on, what is the format? And I think our next slide actually shows this. We try to visualize it like this. On the right side, you see that all the projects that have been defined, both Expand EH, Share, and all the rest, handle mostly a number of use cases. We've got the use case of patient summary, e-prescription, imaging, hospital discharge, and laboratory report. Now, all those things in itself, you could say, okay, how are we going to create a data format? Well, the data format, you better see it as more as a concept. It's a concept that will that will take an assembly of a number of different ideas together. There will be structuring of data inside this. How are we going to structure data to actually transfer a patient summary? That will be in the format. However, if we actually want to have meaningful interoperability, we will have to think about what does workflow have to say, or where does workflow have impact in this whole thing. And so probably there will be something said on, if you have this type of use case, patient summary, how will you work with this, and what will the workflow be? That will probably get a sort of definition in there. Specifically, functionality, e-prescription, e-dispensation says it itself, but also how do you use patient summaries, hospital discharge letters, and even imaging studies that might have an idea within the format in itself. And then we've got the more technical things, the transactions on how you get to know which information is there, how you retrieve the information, and even probably maybe how you visualize it, as said in functionality. Whether you have actually consulted information is definitely an audit question. And as structure is probably one of the biggest frontiers in that we still have to tackle, or that a lot of people have already tackled, but to get it into the real world is at this time still a problem. value sets and how to convert what we have today into meaningful structured data is also one of the realms where we need to have consensus on, and that consensus is at the moment being built in the projects like ExpandEH, XShare, through feedback loops with XT-EHR, and in XT-EHR you need to know all the member states are represented. There is one slight difference that you need to know between all those projects. You have the European projects. In that thing, they are funded by the European Commission, and there are a number of organizations that create a consortium. And a consortium is a group of organizations that answer a tender of the European Commission to actually do a project. EPSOS was like that, ExpandEH was like that, XShare was also like that. How does IHE get into those projects? Well, we actually team up with a whole group of organizations, among which, for example, HL7-Europe. And we team up to actually say, okay, this is the best answer that we can give for your question or of where you want to get on your way towards the EHDS. We've been lucky enough, I think, in the last couple of decades that IHE has been trusted by the Commission and by other organizations, one, to get into the consortiums and to team up with, and that the consortia in which we got into, were trusted by the Commission to actually handle at least part of those projects. As you saw from one of the previous slides, we are at least in one of the next projects. I2X is a follow-up project of XShare that will probably start 2026, if I'm not mistaken, Sophia. I hope you either say
we start
yes,
in January.
January 2025. I'm a year off. And there we, again, IHE will have the same role and we'll try to handle the same type of questions as we've discussed here. The timeline is in our next slide, and you can see that that already goes up until 2027. All the things that we've discussed so far, regulation, the format, underlying infrastructure is here. Engagement of the member states is ongoing. There are a number of member states who have already been in there a long time, and there are a number of other member states who are recently starting to do that. And there are a number of services that everybody is trying to make work, among which lab results, medical imaging, hospital discharge letter. You will definitely recognize the clouds that we've had from the previous slide. With that, I think we conclude more or less our talk and our general introduction to what are European projects. The idea was to give you an insight in how they work, what the underlying ideas, and why IHE is actually trying to engage with those projects with the European Commission. Because we have always known that the overarching idea of the European Commission is to get towards interoperability within the European Union. And we have a feeling right now that it has a snowball effect. XT-EHR, XShare, and the following projects are culminating into more and more of very specific, pun intended, specifications and recommendations that will be operationalizable, whatever, don't matter, in the near future. And with that, we are very much open for further questions, should you have them, and otherwise we will definitely answer your questions at a later date. I don't know if anybody wants the floor. Otherwise, I give the floor back to Colleen.
Feel free to raise your hand and speak up. Is this clear to you? Do you have any particular use case for your company or your organization which is not completely clear? The implementing acts are not there yet. So and there is a lot that we are still waiting for. All the people.
Just what I can add, Caroline, is that you can participate also in those projects. That's always open. So the ones that are already started, that's a bit more complicated to participate, but there are always some ways as external advisor or things like that. The project sorry, oops, I'm going into bad direction. From I2X, you can still engage and be part of the demonstration. And of course, there will be some later projects that you can engage to. You can also send emails to Peter and I, for example, in IHE, and we can see which project we are participating in and which could fit, for example, what you would like to do also in the European ecosystem. And be aware that the Commission is issuing some calls, I think 3 or 4 times a year, so you can consult them and of course find a consortium to engage.
Anyone having a question?
Sorry, can I ask a silly, potentially a silly question?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, and just to ensure my understanding, I guess, because it's a really good presentation, and the focus is on the structures and infrastructure for collecting data and the primary use of health data. So this is the secondary use of health data is kind of beyond the scope of this presentation, or how does that link to, or have you got activities in that space as well? I know it's different. I don't. Yeah.
To be honest, the secondary use is not on our in our purview right now. However, most of the principles and specifications that are now being created for primary use will be portable towards secondary use once you go over an anonymization step. That anonymization, pseudonymization step has not, as far as I know, there could be other European projects that we are not in, and that is and that's about the case. So more or less, that's what we see for the projects that we're in now. They're mainly focused on primary use.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that you have to get that correct and right first. Otherwise, there's no secondary use. So, yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Thank you.
Could you go, Charles Parizeau here? Could you go back to the slide that has the specification delivery timeline? This one, the one, oh, this one, yeah. I am seeing around the middle of May of mid-25, a lot of intermediate delivery, some a little bit before, some a little bit after. I'm wondering if we should not be either probably at the IHE Plug-a-thon to cover those intermediate specification. Are there some effort, plan and means for industry to engage and check those and see if they actually do incorporate, if there is no gaps?
For now, I don't know, but that could be a discussion that we have with the Connected-on team, I think.
I think there is some EHDS related topic plug-a-thon plans. I don't know exactly what is the status and what would be offered to test, but of course that's something that we can take into account.
Yeah, those intermediate specs would be the best. You can even have a pre-release of some intermediate specs. So okay, thank you.
Yeah, definitely, and the purview of I think I2X and maybe X shared, that might be an option. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I continue on the same logic, the specs that are going to be delivered to the EU Commission, the green one, they're not going to be definite yet, but those could be an opportunity to test at the IHE Connectathon in 2026.
Yeah, the IHE Connectathon is actually an ideal testing bed to do or to actually do this. Yeah, we could also think about maybe projectathons in that vein. Whether they are through connectathons or through projectathons is another discussion, but it follows the same logic, I think.
Okay.
Maybe for a timeline, also the Connectathon Week 2025 will be on the week of the 23rd of June in Vienna. And we have added a slide for that also.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Along that path, regarding these intermediate deliveries, do you know if there is any public commenting around planned for these, or will this be only available to ones which are engaged in the EU projects, or how this will be handled?
Yeah, do you know, Sophia? That I don't know what the
To
status
be honest,
there
I
is.
don't know. I think there will be some during the development of the implementing act. Maybe there will be some feedback phase and comment phases, but I don't know.
Yeah, being engaged in XTHR, Charles on the phone here, I can tell you that the first half of 2025, XTHR has expectation to perform public comments on the draft specification.
Okay, excellent.
No date has been set yet, but that's definitely part of the strategy.
I think that's something we should closely monitor when these things become available, to have then also capacity, also reach out to the vendor members of IHE-Europe, of course, to inform them that there's something coming that they should have a look at.
Yeah. Sophia? Charles again, sorry, I'm speaking all the time here. Could you explain within the context of Expand? I've heard that there is an industry XNet team that is working and assessing the specification space and making recommendation. Can we expect to see something out of that XNet industry team coming out?
So as I was explaining in the ExpandDH project, the goal was really to create ecosystem. So we create some XNet. There are 10 of them. One of them is for industry. So the first goal of the XNet was to give feedback on the information that we had and the result that we had from the project. But now we use the space as commenting on the electronic health recollection format and the regulation. So all the things that are not really clear for industry, and that needs a bit of clarification or discussion. So we currently have 3 main points that we started discussing. So the first one is about the exchange of documents and the way to exchange the document, the content, and the transaction. The second point is on the testing. So all the testing environment that will be proposed by EHDS and what should be the proper way to test for vendors. And the last point is about the definition of EHR system and if it will be use case dependent or not. So this result will be visible in the result of ExpandDH project. So in the deliverable of work package 5 that I think I would be able to share once they are publicly available. And then I think the goal would be to continue this discussion group for industry, to have a place where industry can provide comments and can interact the people working in the project, and also the results and work being done inside of the projects.
Yeah, it would be great that IHE invite this group to present their work and broaden it so that we can discuss it with other stakeholders on the clinical side, on the administrative side, with the health agencies and so forth. That would be a great webinar to plan
Absolutely.
in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. And I see that Vincent has his hand raised.
Yes, maybe I'm not sure if I'm well informed on this topic, but about the consultation, my opinion is that right now it is a thing of every country. So every country has a stakeholder and will organize its own form of consultation within the country. So that's why it's very good when we have also a consultation option on European level from IHE perspective. And I think there are more organizations interested in that way of consulting the format, not only via a specific country, but also on the European level.
Agree.
Yeah, Vincent, for industry, there's also the Digital Europe platform, for which national industry associations also provide input to. So through Agoria, for example, in Belgium, we give the input to Digital Europe. And I think as well, IHE-Europe as Agoria has good relationships with Digital Europe. And I do think that we are all aligned here. A lot of the IHE-Europe vendor companies are also represented in Digital Europe, for example. So I am convinced that we can drive it in the right direction. Because as pointed out by Peter and Sophia, the European Commission does trust the involved parties, thanks to all the preceding projects there. And they give kind of the operational aspects to the projects and the experts that are in there.
Yes, thank you. And I was thinking, sorry, in addition to Charles and the connectathons, maybe it is good to have some focus on the first categories like medication and patient summaries, because then we can learn together how to do it. Because I think a lot of people agree with me that the timelines will maybe not stick exactly the same as they are presented right now. Then we learn in the first categories by doing. But maybe that's a personal opinion.
No, that makes sense.
Thank you, Vincent.
On the other hand, you know, we see that the patient summary and the medication is already deployed on the cross-border and is operational. So the question is, if it works, don't break it. So I'm having an interesting question by, you know, putting those first when it is what works. Is that the right pragmatic decision? So we'll see what happens. Maybe lab and hospital discharge that are part of the new use case could be a better effort to do first, because here we got nothing at the European level, neither cross-border or so I don't know, just a thought. But
yeah, on the other hand, we have to show off the method and the testing and the connectathon to be glued to the EHDS.
yeah,
So we're convinced by that, but we have to make sure that everyone is.
absolutely, I agree with you. The being engaged on the testing is, in a sense, more important than choosing what we are going to implement first. Can leave that to the user and the commission.
There is something in the chat. No, it's not a question. Anyone else who would like to speak up, add, point out something? So once again, feel free to reach out to Peter and Sophia. I would say we can close the webinar. Make sure to register for the 13th of December webinar, and feel free to share the webinar recordings with other people, as there are already plenty of them and they are very valuable. So thank you very much for your attendance, and have a good Friday, and afterwards a wonderful weekend. And we hope to see you soon. Thank you, Peter and
Thank you.
Sophia, and thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Thanks for having us. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.